Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be able to reminisce about a project we all started 20 years ago. The Million Book Project was a multinational collaborative venture started in 2001 to scan 1 million books and make them available for free to everyone around the world. CMU provided the scanners and technology and training, and China and India provided the resources needed to scan the books. Today, I'd like to share with you the background to the Million Book Project, what we did, the bottlenecks, and steps towards the vision of universal free access to all creative works to anyone, anywhere in the world, in any language. All the speakers in this symposium were central to the creating, communicating, and executing that vision. The photograph in the next slide shows Carbonell, Reddy, Mike Shamos, and Gloriana St. Clair, who were the directors of the Million Book Project in 2001. Sadly, we have lost one of the key players, Jamie Carbonell, to cancer last year. Ram Kunduru, the program chairman for the Million Book Project 20th Anniversary Symposium, has been the director of the UDL project for the last 10 years. Among other speakers today are Bob Thibodeau, my co-conspirator on digital libraries in the 90s, Michael Lesk, who was the program director at NSF, who believed in the vision of Million Book Project and provided funding for the multinational program in spite of some doubting reviews. And Erica Linke and Gloriana St. Clair, whose leadership in the library community and their broad knowledge of copyright have been central to the project. By the way, the Million Book Project did not come out of thin air. Now I'll start my screen share and see if we can go to there. Now I will go into slideshow mode. So the Million Book Project was kind of started in 2001, but in the next slide, I'll talk about the precursors of how we got there to the Million Book Project. But here you see a photograph that was taken maybe 10, 20, 15 years ago. Gloriana would know exact date. You see Jaime Carbonell to the left and the rest of us, Reddy, Shamos, and Gloriana on the others. So now I want to go to the origins of the Million Book Project. As early as the 70s, we used to already put reports and papers and theses that we produce using word processors online for others to access. In the 80s, we attempted to create a French digital library as part of Centre Mondial. In 1995, we had an electronic libraries workshop at CMU. Bob Kahn and Vint Cerf was attending too. And at that meeting, I believe, Vint Cerf coined the phrase digital libraries. Since then, we've been using that phrase instead of electronic libraries. Around that time, at the end of the thing, new technologies for high-speed scanning and OCR and so on came about. What I'd like to show you is
The goal of the Universal Library is to make all authored works created since the beginning of time instantly available to anyone, anywhere in the world, in any language. Let's now take a look at some of the materials contained in the Universal Library and how to access them. We're looking at a high-resolution color image of a cactus flower from an antique botanical print. The original of this print is rare and fragile and is normally inaccessible to human beings. But through the Universal Library, it can be made available to researchers all over the world. To look at Other material in the Universal Library, we just go back to the home page, looking at a different book. Here's one, for example, books by Charles Dickens. We can look at the full text of Oliver Twist and instantaneously access any chapter of the book. Begin reading, print the book out, whatever we'd like to do with it. Through the Universal Library, we can access newspapers from all over the world. Here, for example, from the different continents, we can access a Japanese newspaper, the Japan Times. These are today's headlines, November 4th, 1997. If we want to look at a particular article, I just click on it and begin reading the full text from the Japan Times. Through the Universal Library, we can actually listen to music. Here, for example, some works by Mozart.
This goes on. We have a long version of about 6-7 minutes, and they will be available as links on the PowerPoint presentation that will be offline. However, the vision for the Million Book Project that came out of all of these things, as you saw, that video was created in 1997. And it was fortunate that Mike Chamos accessed a newspaper of the day, so we know exact date on which it was created. So the interesting thing about it was that even at that time, it was always envisioned to be a multimedia digital library, including music and movies and everything else. And the issue, of course, is how do you make it all available for free? Because a lot of the interesting ones are still in copyright, and that was the problem we faced. So what we need to do for the future is preserve the culture, and that means we need to find ways of capturing books and newspapers and photos and paintings and music and videos, and instantly available to anyone, anywhere in the world. So the question was, what can we do at that time when we started the project? There was a problem. We didn't want to cut up the books, and the OCR was not quite accurate. And then we had two advances in technology, which made it possible to scan and OCR many of the books and so on. And in 2002, we signed an MOU with Zhejiang University in China. And in China, they scanned over 1 million books very quickly. And in Google started scanning in 2007. And at that point, we kind of limited the scanning efforts to truly, out of copyright ancient books that needed to be preserved. But a lot of the books of interest are still in copyright. So what we need to kind of also think about is, what about the born digital content that's being created in the 21st century? All of that is being lost. There's no cogent plan for saving the born digital entities, and the copyrighted objects are being lost forever, except maybe for a few bestsellers. Out of the 1 million books that are published every year, less than 50,000 break even. And out of the 50,000, less than 1,000 are kind of bestsellers. Out of the 1,000, maybe 10 to 100 will be still being read after 20 or 30 years or 100 years or something. Those numbers, I'm sure, Gloriana and Erica would be able to tell better. I don't have the precise numbers. So the grand challenge is, how do we create a digital archive of all born digital content, since they're all in copyright at the beginning? And that's where the society as a whole has to kind of look at the original constitutional statement saying, for the benefit of mankind, we will give copyright for a limited time or something. And in this case, the copyright time may have gone to 100 years, or even, let's say, even if it's 200 years, doesn't matter. But we need to find a way of capturing all that content at the time it's kind of born digital, so that it's not lost. As I said, 99% of the material becomes, not commonly accessed after 10, 20 years. And once these people lose interest, and then they never save it or not available to anyone. So here is an example of what happened with copyright. It has gone from 28 years to now over 100 years. And the big issue is orphan works. Creative work is orphan when it's generating little or no revenues. And the creative work is abandoned when an attempt to locate an owner of an unclaimed work through letters and newspaper announcements are unsuccessful. We need to provide an opt-in process by which an incentive to receive royalty for every access, analogous to the public lending right, would be beneficial both to the authors and for the society. And the question is, how do we pay them? This is one of the things we need to discuss. We can't add any other tax, but if we were to add tax on the sale of digital works, that might be okay. For example, if Van Gogh painting is sold for $50 million, maybe 1% of that would be quite a large sum of money to add to the annual public lending right fund. Anyway, in conclusion, I'm proposing that we figure out how to convene an international summit on universal copyright policies of what should be the new copyright for the 21st century, and figure out a way of creating a global copyright registry, so that if I want to know whether something is in copyright, a painting is in copyright, I ought to be able to kind of post it and search for it in the registry. And if it's not there, it may still be in copyright, but as far as I'm concerned, it is not. And so if I use it, I should not be punished by punitive damages, but maybe some nominal $1 fine but the author can still have moral right to the copyright. But if you don't register it, you lose any ability to collect punitive damages. So the idea of a national digital archives and compulsory licensing of orphan works and abandoned works, we've talked about it, but hasn't happened. And hopefully it'll happen in the next 10, 20 years. And most important thing is we need to respect the rights of the authors of creative works. I think we should give them the right to set their own copyright duration, anywhere from 10 to 100 to even 200 years. If Shakespeare books are still being read after 400 years, maybe he should get some royalties for use of it, or his estate or his descendants can get royalty. And that's fine, that should be okay. So we need to figure out what it is and how to make it reasonable, and so that people can use copyrighted content without fear of being, big threats, from large corporations and lawyers. And we need to figure out a way of creating national digital archives and international digital archives. There's the concept of legal deposit, mandatory deposit of hard copy books. I don't believe there is a corresponding digital depository. There may be one at a Library of Congress where you can deposit a digital artifact, but it's not, it should be easy for average people to access and search and locate and see what is there. And it should be easy, very easy for the creators to deposit their, their work there, so that, it is searchable, but not, downloaded until it's in public domain. With that, I'd like to stop. Thank you very much for this opportunity.